Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 41 of B-Road Ballers, the review series of course for Gran Turismo's hot hatch selection. And in this particular pick we're featuring a hot hatch which is, I would say, quite easy to underestimate. Certainly a vehicle which I've never particularly had much interest in, and that vehicle is the Toyota Yaris. Being as it is a mass production Toyota, it pretty much just is designed to do a job. Toyota is very good at making cars that are just that. Cars that get the job done. The Corolla, the Avensis, the Yaris, they just do what you need from a car without really any unnecessary frills, fanciness, and unfortunately charisma. And as a result they can kind of have an image of being a little bit dull. In the case of this particular version of the Yaris though, that's not the case. This is the top performance model of the Yaris which is in the game. Now there are a couple of different versions of the Yaris as far as performance goes. You've got the Euro Sport version, the slightly more powerful version, this version, the RS model, we've got the newer Yaris as well, but this is pretty much the top of the line as far as pure performance. And it has some pretty decent specs for a Yaris. Just under 150 horsepower is certainly nothing to be sniffed at. And it looks sportier than the other versions of the Yaris. It has that darker front and rear bumper section, slightly larger rear wing, and although it's still a relatively understated looking car, it does look sporty, befitting of a small hot hatch. And when fully tuned, this is actually a pretty impressive car. Now the PP for a start is quite high, 491. Which is probably a lot higher than you'd expect of a Yaris, especially given that it's only working with a 1.5 litre engine. That engine though can be turbocharged up to a very impressive 285 horsepower, and also, and perhaps even more impressively, 250 foot-pounds of torque. Now you put that power and that kind of torque into a car that only weighs 857 kilos, and it's going to go like a rocket. Now the horsepower per tonne is 333, which doesn't sound that amazing, and the main reason for that is because it doesn't have a massive amount of power to work with, but the fact that it is so light means that it is definitely a seriously rapid little car, especially given that it's also very cheap, so the performance that you get and the value for money is really good on this car, which isn't surprising given that it is a Japanese performance car, and they are usually very good for value for money. It costs just under 19 grand, which isn't necessarily the best value of the hot hatch class, but it's certainly not bad. It's very cheap, very easy to get the car early on in the game, and it is quick, given that you have 285 horsepower to work with. Now in a straight line, it's obviously never going to worry something like a Focus ST anytime soon, but around corners, it's fast. And it's not just fast, it's fun. Because many cars can be quick around the track, or quick in a straight line, or maybe even competitive, race winners in fact. But they may also be kind of boring, because they may lack flair. Some vehicles just approach performance in a very clinical way. They almost feel like they're doing the work for you. And sometimes that can, funnily enough, be a little bit dull, despite being fast. The Yaris manages to be fast, but also fun. The car has a lot of character. It's a very thumpy, playful little car. The handling isn't necessarily the best of a small hot hatch. A K car, I would say, does have better handling than this, but this has, as some other hot hatches do as well, I would say, a good mix between the two. It has the lightweight factor and that kind of playful, nimble handling due to that low weight, but also its compact size that you would usually expect from a K car, but also a lot more power and a lot more torque than you'd expect from a K car, which kind of allows it to straddle the line between tiny super mini and full-on hot hatch. And that's a good place to be. It means you can get to some degree some of the best points of both worlds and put them into one very good all-round package. And Toyota managed to do that with this car, especially in its fully tuned form. Now, 491 pp is still very high, and whether or not I would recommend racing at that level is a completely different question. I would say this car is at its most competitive at, say, between 425 and 475 pp. So even fully tuned, it's not that much more than that. But be careful at racing it at that level, because although it's good, it's not necessarily going to beat everything you come across. If you use it on the right track, at the right pp level though, it will certainly do you proud, and you'll have a lot of fun while driving it. It's a potential race winner, but one which doesn't forget that fun is also very important. And I like cars that do that, because race winning doesn't necessarily mean that you need to negate everything else. You can also have a car which is fun, playful, and potentially exciting to drive, not just fast. And I would say that this car does a really good job of that. And from someone who doesn't like the Yaris in general, I think that shows just how good this car can potentially be. Now, is it a car for everyone? Well, not necessarily, because people all have their own opinions. But I would definitely recommend spending that just under 20 grand just to give this car a try. As far as pure performance, it's definitely the strongest Yaris in the game, and that doesn't sound like it's really saying much, but in the case of this car, it actually is really good. So it's not a lot of money to fork out, so I'd definitely recommend giving it a try at least once. If you don't like it, you haven't lost that much. If you do though, you could potentially have a pretty interesting vehicle that not many people use. But that's it overall for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.